Welcome. Thanks for coming this morning. Like I said, I was just on this trip through the country, driving around. I spent about 4 or 5 years kind of living in my car and being nomadic and having different lives here and there around the country, always coming back here for sessions and ongos and practice periods and stuff. But that, was a whole chapter 7, 8 years ago. And so there were a lot of places and people that I hadn't seen in a while. And so I kind of wanted to touch base with that chapter of my life. And so I visited about 7 or 8 different locations in those 2.5 weeks. And looking back and wanting to share with you all a little bit about it, I kind of wanted to come up with like a little story or a koan or a practice point from each of the places where I stopped, to have some kind of narrative, some kind of dharmic narrative of the trip. So I hope that's okay. I'll try to get through each one as quick as possible. And hopefully each story resonates and provides some kind of inspiration or insight or something for us as we talk about it. And of course, I always love what our friend Gak shared once, which is we should listen to a Dharma talk like a tree receives the wind. And so the wind rustles some leaves and doesn't rustle other leaves, and then it just goes away. So just kind of allow it all to just kind of sink in, rustle whatever it rustles. And of course, I hope there is enough water in the Pacific Ocean to rinse my words from your ears. So, I basically started in St. Louis. I flew to St. Louis on Friday the 20th for a wedding of some old friends that I made when I lived there. And I just first wanted to say about the wedding that the pastor said something during the ceremony. He said, he used some quote from the Bible, but it was basically, whenever you two see each other, the people getting married, whenever you see each other, think highly of each other. Which is kind of simple, but when he put it in the context of like seeing each other as God, seeing each other as angels, even when you're so mad and so resentful and so up to here with each other, think highly of each other. And what a great piece of advice for a relationship. But of course, we have to kind of take that and say, what if we did that with everybody? Absolutely everybody. Our partner, our family, our friends, and yes, our nemesis, our bullies, the thorns in our side. Every time you see them, think highly of them. Not something you can just say and do, right? It's probably a lifelong practice. It's probably very challenging. But particularly with our enemies and our challenges, it just seemed, I don't know, it just really resonates to me that if we're going to fight with somebody, if we're going to try to change somebody's mind, if we're going to try to, beat somebody, how much better and effective that process is going to be if we are thinking highly of them. Just in my experience, to the extent that I have been able to do that, those debates, those fights, those challenges have just been smoother and more effective when I think highly of that person. So I wanted to share that, but that's not my St. Louis koan story. My St. Louis koan story is about my friend Mark, who I saw. And Mark is a music producer who I used to work with a lot when we both lived in LA. He has since moved to St. Louis to raise his family, and It's kind of a common story. You go to Hollywood to do the thing, and then you go back home to be a grown-up. But of course, he's still making music, and he's just a fabulous, fabulous human. But he took me out in St. Louis, not where I was staying, but closer to where he grew up. And so he was kind of showing me where he grew up. And for all intents and purposes, basically, he grew up in the hood. And if anyone's been to these like smaller Midwest cities, it's scary. It's scary. Like there's hood everywhere, there's ghetto and ratchet everywhere, but like in these small cities where I can't really describe it, but it's smaller, and the opportunity, the hope that people feel is even less than you feel out here. So, you know, East St. Louis and other parts, like they're just really difficult situations to grow up in. And so he was sharing with me about his childhood, and of course getting involved with all the wrong people and doing all the wrong things. And he told me that when he was about, I guess, 14 or 15, one of his best friends got shot and killed in the midst of their activities. And he told me that as soon as that happened, his whole life changed. He was like, that's it, I'm out. And he left whatever people, whatever situation, whatever activities, got into music, got into school, got into girls, you know, whatever more kind of safer activities. And now he's become just this incredible, kind, talented, good father. I mean, just this amazing guy. And so that really reminded me of something that a Dharma teacher recently talked to me about. I was talking with them recently, talking about teaching the Dharma and how to work with students. And they said something along the lines of like, I hope that we can allow our students to experience just that little bit of trauma to wake up. And that struck me so strongly because in the nonprofit world, in the religious world, in the meditation world, in the nonprofit, everything these days is like trauma informed, trauma informed, trauma informed. Education, it's everywhere. And I think that's good. I think that's done a lot of good for a lot of people. And we certainly do a lot of trauma informed. Our space here is definitely trauma informed. And so to hear this Dharma teacher, who, by the way, certainly finds themselves on like the marginalized intersectionality chart columns in a lot of ways, to hear them say, I really hope we can instill just that little bit of trauma, was really helpful for me. Because if you think about it, if you look at the Buddha himself, right, he loses his mom when he's born. His mom died giving birth to him. And so he always had that little, even though he was surrounded with all the riches and all the beauty and all the education and everything you could ever want, he always had that little bit of trauma. And a lot of teachers and scholars say that it was that losing of his mom that gave him his spiritual quest in the first place, in his 30s, or maybe late 20s, I'm not sure. So yeah, he lives his whole life surrounded by all this, glamour and riches and food and great stuff. And then he's like plagued by this question. He hops over the wall of his palace. He sees leprosy and illness and death and fighting and ugliness. How traumatic is that? After a whole decades of just being surrounded by beautiful stuff. And then he joins the ascetics, who are like starving themselves and self-immolation, and he just, he almost dies starving himself until Sujata gives him some milk and he discovers the middle way. And then, if that's not enough trauma, he goes and sits under a tree where insects and birds are like making nests in his hair, and he's visited by visions of like demons trying to like tempt him away from his path, and his father is coming to him saying, you're a failure, you should like lead the country, and what are you doing? Like, this is not a trauma informed process. So, and if you look at Mark, right, he goes through this trauma and changes his whole life around. So I think we create a very safe, trauma-informed space here, and I'm glad that we do. And I think that there is ample opportunity to be here for a safe space, to find calm and stillness. And we also are offering this path to really become intimate with this Buddha way, transforming our entire relationship to what we think existence is. And that is not so trauma-informed. I remember Kyoshin, our associate, our affiliated teacher, and she's in the leadership here as well in ways. She gave a talk where she said, Zazen is not a safe space. We are calling into question every last idea and concept that we've ever had about ourselves in the world. So, I wanted to share that to kind of express the power of what that can do, to put ourselves through that little bit of trauma, just that little bit, in a safe space. And also is like a little bit of a warning. You know, I think that Zen, particularly in America, has gotten in trouble presenting this like, Buddhism, you know, come be peaceful. And then people dive in and they kind of come up against this slightly traumatic experience, and it doesn't end well. A lot of people end up resentful, unprepared for it. So just wanted to share that. Like I said, there's many ways to come here and engage and be fully participating without being traumatized. I hope that's not the message here. But just an interesting invitation. What does that mean to go through that little bit of unsafety in the name of liberation? So that's my St. Louis story. Then I drove to Kansas City and had a nice time with different friends, but I wanted to highlight my time with Adam. Adam, I met actually in Los Angeles many years ago, and he also moved back to Kansas City from where he's from to start his family. And he has a beautiful wife and kids. And he is about to move into a new house, brand new house. And he took me to go see his house in construction, which at the moment is just like framing and a little bit of drywall. And what's so interesting to me about this house, and what struck me so much, is that it's in one of these little like pop-up developments. And maybe you've seen them. We have some here in California where you drive for like 15, 20, 30 minutes of nothing. And this is Kansas, y'all. We're talking like Kansas. So you're driving for 30 minutes of just grass. Maybe a barn every 5 or 10 minutes or so. But there is nothing. And then out of nowhere is this development of 20, 30 big, nice, new houses with like, a little paved loop that goes through them. Some of these developments are like really cookie cutter, where every house looks the same. Some of them are like slightly different. And so he took me there, this little hidden, middle class oasis, I guess you could call it. And the thing, this guy is not a wealthy guy. So you can go to these in the middle of nowhere nice new neighborhoods for like probably the same price you'd buy a bathroom here in San Diego, you know? And so, and he took me around, and I just was flooded with all of these emotions being there. Because on the one hand, it was just so safe and pretty and new and wholesome. And the sun was setting over the endless meadows and prairies, and there was maybe some trees over there, and all these like nice families with their cars in the garage and these new houses. And I just felt so happy for him, right? Like he is just really going to be having this very family oriented, beautiful, peaceful, safe, secure, poker nights with the other dads and the kids, with their bikes and the thing. And there was just such a warmth and a beauty to that. And then immediately, I was like flooded with this, what about all the unsheltered folks? What about all the people running from bombs right now? Why does this guy just get to enjoy his little poker bicycle 2-story house life? And then I started to feel like judgmental. Here we are, a lot of us in the city, like doing so much to help people, to volunteer, to sacrifice. And I started feeling, judging this guy or anyone who wants to just hide away in this little hidden oasis, away from the suffering of the world to pursue their warm, beautiful, peaceful life. And then I started feeling judgmental of myself for judging him, into that kind of feedback loop. And it really just kind of, this question of what are we pursuing? Because the minute you say they're abdicating their duty, I'm here doing meditation with people and going to the shelter and teaching special needs kids, and all he's doing is, but the minute you go there, you're basically saying anyone who's not doing what I'm doing is a worse person. And that's not fair. Maybe it's fair to say white men shouldn't be running away to neighborhoods to enjoy a peaceful life. That might be fair. Or anyone with a certain income shouldn't be running away. They should have a responsibility. All these questions, I don't have any answers for you. I was just particularly struck at how like warm and beautiful it felt, and then how angry and resentful I felt about it. What level of responsibility to take is enough? What isn't enough? This is just a koan that we bring into our life. How do we judge ourselves? How do we judge others? How much are we sacrificing? How much are we enjoying? How much peace do we have? How much is that peace jeopardizing our work for others? All these things, I think, are just worth opening up to. And there's a koan I'll just share quickly that highlights this, where a monk comes to a monastery and he asks the master of the monastery, he says, what is Buddha? Or what is awakening? And the master says, here we plow the rice fields. And the monk says, how does plowing the rice fields help and save the people of the 3 worlds? So you sit here and you meditate and you make rice balls. How is that helping anybody? And the master says, what is it that you call the 3 worlds? What is this world? What is your life? Is it real? Is it fake? Is it a dream? Is it empty? Is it not empty? Are there other people to help? Is it all just one where there is nothing to help, nothing to save? I'm just offering these questions. I hope they rustle something. And Adam is this amazing, kind person with a meditation practice who's going to raise wonderful kids and be a good person. So who am I to sit there and say this jerk is just running off to, it's really tough. So, from Kansas, I went to, gosh, how is it 11:30 already? I'm so sorry. I'll try to hurry up. From Kansas, I drove to Ray, Colorado, which is a tiny, tiny farm town of maybe 1,000 people where I used to work on a hemp farm. And it's on the border of Colorado and Kansas and Nebraska, where those three states meet. Needless to say, kind of a Trumpy, farmy, conservative town. And so I went there and got in touch with a bunch of old friends that I hadn't seen in a while, and it was really cool to be back there. And the air in these towns literally just smells like wheat and manure. It's amazing. So yeah, catching up with everybody, I probably saw maybe 6 or 7 people. And each one of them, when I said, how's things going, how have things been, each one of them mentioned the newly arrived, or over the past few years arrived, South African migrant workers. So this tiny little town on the border of Nebraska and Colorado over the past few years has had this influx of white South African migrant workers to work the potato farms in particular. So this is like so random, blowing my mind, but I guess one of the big farm families found out that there are like potato savvy laborers from South Africa who are looking for work. Whether there's something along the lines of preferring white laborers to brown laborers, I would not put it past these folks. I don't know. I can't claim that. But what I wanted to say about these South African migrants is that everyone I talked to made a huge point, a very intentional point, of saying how blatantly racist these South Africans are. Not like microaggressions, not like, seal up the border. We're talking like hatred. And all these people I was talking to, some of them are restaurant owners, bartenders, business owners, and they're telling me how they have had to like kick people out for the racist things they're saying. Lecture them on how we don't do that here. That's not okay. So, I just kind of found myself in this little twilight zone where like the inhabitants of this red, conservative, Trumpy farm town are, not bragging. They don't know about me and my work. They're just sharing their social action work against racism and how they've had to like kick out racism in their town because we don't do that here. And so, I would 100% guess that these folks are against affirmative action and that these folks don't like DEI and these folks don't know what the 13th Amendment is, a lot of work there. But just that experience of hearing these farm folks standing up for racial justice, or at least not blatant racism, just kind of gave me a little bit of a perspective shift, a little bit of a broadening of how big the world is, how many perspectives there are, and what people are capable of. For whatever that's worth. So then from Ray, I went to Leadville, Colorado, which is a tiny little mining town about 11,000 feet up in the Rockies. And if you haven't driven on the 70 through the Rockies, I highly recommend it. It is epic, epic eye candy. So I go up to this really high mountain town and visited with my old friend Will and his wife and their new baby and their 3 dogs who are like living in a tiny camper for the summer. Did some camping, very aberrant for me. Um, I don't know why you people like camping so much, but anyway, I went through it. You like camping? So yeah, the little story I wanted to share from that is that my buddy's stepson is 17, very unique teenager, and I got a chance to talk with him a little bit, and he seemed to be like a thoughtful, open-minded teenager, and so I kind of asked him at one point, I'm like, yo, what is all this? What is the point of all this? And he said, I want to appreciate my life and just live through Christ. And for some reason, I don't really know this kid. He could be a terrible kid, but he seemed genuine and he seemed interesting and unique and thoughtful. And for some reason, when he said, I just want to live through Christ, and you're 17, right? The hormones, post-high school life, friends, dynamics, insecurity, all the things going on, all the opportunities, all the things open to you at 17. And this kid just said, and his parents are not religious, so this is his own journey. And I don't know, that just really resonated with me, that he's prioritizing his practice, basically, and it just reminded me of all the vows that we take. What is it that I'm prioritizing? And I love that language. What do I live through? Because, you know, I'm here, I've dedicated my life to this Zen center, and there's tons of times where I feel like I'm living through Justin Bieber, or I'm living through AOC, or I'm living through, you know, some other dark, shadowy, heathenistic character. So, you know, it's always changing, but to have that as kind of a reminder, and Osho always talks about reminders. So yeah, what am I living through? And what a beautiful thing to have something like Christ, holiness, sacredness, goodness, compassion, Buddha. How am I living through those things as like a priority? It's a really beautiful concept coming from a little kid. It's a really powerful moment. So then I drove from Leadville down the mountain a little bit to Taos, New Mexico, which is a deeply magical, enchanted, unique, gypsy, just magical place. Taos, New Mexico. Corroboration, Diana? The land of disenchantment. So, Taos is home to all different kinds of people. Everyone has an amazing story, but particularly home to a special kind of transient community. So a lot of unsheltered folks, a lot of alternative lifestyle folks go through Taos. A lot of them are shamans, a lot of them are blends of all different kinds of things you can imagine. And the friends that I have made there over the years are in that community. So the day that I spent there, I was kind of with them, and we spend most of the day in the plaza in the center of town. So, you know, these folks aren't working, and all different kinds of personalities and mental health issues and substances and all that, and everything is included and welcomed and loved. It's a very loving, powerful community they have there. And at a certain point, one of the guys says, man, it would be so cool to get a couple pizzas and just like put it right here in the middle of our circle. And I'm sitting there. I've talked to everybody. There's maybe like 7 or 8 of us. I know no one here has any money. And I know that they know that like I bought them a coffee this morning. And in fact, one of the guys there is actually like kind of a shadowy figure in the group and kind of loud and purportedly violent. And he's yelling and he's wielding a staff that he's swinging around. And so this guy says pizza. And I just disappear into a vortex of chaos. They kept talking. I didn't hear a single word they said. Because I'm like, I could buy that pizza. Should I buy that pizza? I could spend $40 and get a couple pizzas and feed these people, and it probably wouldn't hurt me in any meaningful way. I should totally buy this pizza. What would Bernie do? And then I start thinking, but then I'm like committing to being here for the next like hour or two. This guy's swinging a staff and like yelling racial epithets. It's starting to rain. I really wanted to go to that other restaurant and like maybe meet some other people over there, but like I should be a good person and I should feed these people. And the Hanuman temple is right down the way, and the Hanuman people think that food is the most holy, sacred thing, and sharing food is like the best thing you could do. Like, what an asshole I am. But wait a minute. He kind of made me feel pressured by, he knows that I'm the one with money here. Was he pressuring me? Am I just giving into pressure? Am I just trying to be a good person? Is this even coming from an authentic place? I just go through this whole thing. Meanwhile, no one has asked me for anything directly. I didn't buy the pizza. It was cold and raining, and I was scared of this guy. And all the excuses and all the self-loathing and all of the grandiose, but I could be this kind of person. And the whole time, I could have been there connecting with these people. But instead, I had this whole journey in my head about what kind of person I am. Again, just an offering. I have no answers. That's true. Yeah, these folks have survived for decades, right? I'm obviously not going to save their life with a pizza. But I think that experience of seeing those questions and how they can get in the way of just connecting with people and just acting freely and seeing the depths of I should be this kind of person. It's interesting. So from Taos, I drove to, let's see, we're running out of time here, so I'm going to skip Flagstaff and I'm going to go to Vegas and just say that in Vegas, I went downtown, the Fremont Street experience, if anyone's been there, which is like now almost like the Strip. It's like super busy. So anyway, I got a hotel right on there, and I walked out of the hotel, and after like Taos and small farm towns to go out onto Fremont Street with tens of thousands of people, it was just, lights and half-naked people taking pictures and working women and working men and alcohol and drugs and just everything in your face. It was a lot. But once I kind of settled into it, I noticed this feeling wash over me, totally unconsciously. I don't know anyone here. I will never see anyone here ever again. Everyone here is just living their best life, wearing what they want to. Something about that anonymity and that freedom just totally took me over. And I was walking through the street, and there were these guys. There was this team of guys who were like drumming. They brought a drum set, and they were playing like pop music over a loudspeaker and drumming to it. And without even thinking, I just started dancing. Like full on whatever my body wanted to do. And for those of you who may know me, like this is not something I do. I am always thinking about, oh, how would this look? Who would this affect? Is this weird? Will they think I'm this? I'm the. I shouldn't. Who am I to blah? I'm taking a. All of that was just gone. And anything that anyone thought about whatever I was doing wasn't even remotely present. It lasted for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then all those thoughts came flooding back in. And those thoughts are good, right? The point of this is not that we should always go around as if no one's watching and we don't care what anyone thinks. We have to care what people think. That's how we create harmony and compassion and live together. But just to remind ourselves that that freedom is ultimately there beneath everything. Because in a way, this whole world is just one big Vegas. Ultimately, you will never see these people again. Ultimately, this is all just one moment in one place that will be swallowed by the sun or whatever. So that freedom really does exist in every moment, even as we have to navigate dynamics and compassion and empathy and all of that. So invite that freedom, ask about that freedom, because it's available to everybody. And I think Zazen really does help to get in touch with that openness, impermanence, the impermanence of this Vegas world. I love that. Our whole world is just one big casino. So then I came back home, drove to LA, saw my folks, and came back. So I hope that some of these stories were helpful or resonant in some kind of way. And I guess to sum up, I just want to encourage us all that even though I was like on a trip and putting myself in unique positions and exploring and stuff like that, you really don't have to be on a road trip to find these koans every single day in our life. Even in our routine-ass life, going to the same job, dealing with the same people, with the same kids, putting on the same clothes and the same pets. Even in our most routine, ordinary life, to see the practice points, the Dharma gates, the impossible questions that are there for us every single day. And when we can really open up to that, it can make even our most ordinary life extremely rich, with deep opportunities for expansion. So invite those moments in every single day.